What's up everybody, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 in the house, bringing to you another edition of the Flash Season 6 review series, and today I'm going to be talking about episode 3, which I've just finished watching, entitled Dead Man Running, and I have to say that I really enjoyed this episode a lot. We got to see how the team dealt with the news about the Flash dying in the crisis. We also got a cool setup for one of the main villains, Bloodwork, aka Ramsey Rosso. So there was a lot going on in this episode, and we also saw the debut of Nash Wells, played once again by the ever versatile and very talented Tom Cavanagh. And I have to say that overall I really enjoyed this episode a lot, and this season of The Flash, the 6th season that is, has done a great job so far, even though I'm the 3rd episode in this series, and they've done a great job in preparing all of us for the upcoming Crisis crossover event, which is coming up very, very soon. So with that all said, let's talk about episode 3, Dead Man Running. So we kick off this episode by seeing a group of criminals attacked by their seemingly dead boss, Mitch Romero, who's been corrupted by dark matter thanks to Ramsey Rosso's experiments, and he takes them all out. So even though he's already dead, you can clearly see by the colour of his eyes that he's been corrupted thanks to the dark matter. So this is obviously in preparation for Ramsey Rosso turning into Bloodwork for this season, so to speak. So then after that, we see Barry and Iris tell Team Flash about the warning from the Monitor, and he explains to them that he went to see Jay Garrick in Earth 3, and he projected his mind to fast forward into the future to see how this crisis plays out. And he also explains to Team Flash that the crisis that was spoken of in Iris's newspaper isn't happening in 2024, it's coming in December 10th, 2019. And obviously all of Team Flash take the news quite badly, and Barry also explains to them that he saw a giant wave of antimatter wiping out the entire Earth and all of the citizens, including the 3 of them. But he fails to mention that he himself has to sacrifice his life to ensure that all of them survive. So I thought this scene was very well handled, and I thought Ralph Dibny in particular, he really took the news very well, and obviously he was very shaken up by it, but he said, no, we need to get on this straight away. So it's really good to see how far Elongated Man has gone from being the silly buffoon always cracking jokes to a real serious hero. So I have to say, mega props to his character development, and he's come a long way. And Cisco takes the news not very well, and Killer Frost takes the news very, very badly, as you'd expect. And she goes, right, well, I better mark my calendar now, since we're all going to be vaporized in December. So I thought this scene was very well handled, and I thought, this was a very good scene, and it was very few scenes we get to see all these guys together. And when we do, it's really good, and this was no exception. So I really enjoyed this scene a lot, and it's going to be very interesting later on when they learn the news about Barry dying, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. Barry and Killer Frost go to investigate, and they learn that the guns involved in the trafficking were charged with dark matter, which leads them back to confronting Ramsey Rosso. Ramsey denies his involvement with them and offers to help him investigate who stole the dark matter, little knowing that it was actually he himself who stole it. Ramsey apologises to Caitlin for stealing the dark matter. Barry then shortly learns the information on Romero and they get a word of a break-in at Mercury Labs. Barry, in his Flash costume, and Caitlin, her Killer Frost identity, intervene to try and stop him, and Killer Frost comes very close to killing him, which Barry of course is very upset about. Now bear in mind that Killer Frost has just learned the news that she's going to be wiped out in the crisis, so obviously she's not handling the news very well, so she does what she does best. Is the way she deals with things is trying to kill people. So Barry tries to console her by saying that, look, whatever we do not kill, ever. So that was quite a good scene to see that. So it's quite obvious that Killer Frost is taking the news more badly than she's letting on, which is, understandable, because nobody wants to see themselves get wiped out by a wall of antimatter, so she's not dealing with the news very well. Ramsey then asks Barry if he can have access to the dark matter, so Barry reluctantly agrees as a way to learn what Ramsey's evil intentions really are, and Ramsey reveals that he has the same illness as his mother and he is very desperate to try and find a cure through dark matter. Ramsey also realises that Barry is marked for death as well, and ultimately returns the dark matter and he offers to help him. Now, how Ramsey reveals the news that he knows that Barry is going to die, he says, "You're not the only one who's marked for death, are you? You've got a ticking time bomb on yourself." So it's quite interesting that Barry would actually reluctantly agree to let Ramsey help. So this helps set the stage for when Ramsey eventually becomes Bloodwork. So it's really good to see that Flash is not just using his speed, but he's also using his head more. So you can really see how much Barry has matured from the early days of Harrison Wells about not being so quick to trust people. So it's really good we got to see that once again in this scene. So Barry's using more and more of his head these days than his speed, so it was good to see that in this scene as well. Barry then walks in on Killer Frost training very aggressively, and she breaks down and admits to Barry that she's scared of dying in the crisis before she even begins to have a life. So, Killer Frost, she's always been portrayed as this Ice Queen, doesn't care, but at the end of the day she still has Caitlin's warmth and compassion. So to see Killer Frost actually just break down and actually be terrified at the idea of being wiped out in the crisis was a really powerful scene in my opinion, and Danielle Panabaker really delivered in a big way. So I really enjoyed seeing this scene a lot. So it was really cool to see another side to Killer Frost, that there's more to her than just being this heartless ice killer, so to speak. So I really like this a lot. So mega props to Danielle Panabaker, and great performance as always from Grant Gustin. So this was a lot of fun to see these two engage with one another. There was even a moment where Killer Frost actually admitted that she has never even celebrated her own birthday, and that one really caught me by surprise, because you would have thought someone like Caitlin would have celebrated her own birthday. So for her to actually admit to Barry that she's never even had a birthday or had a birthday party really got to me, and it was quite an emotional moment. And speaking of different sides, we also got to learn a bit more about Ralph Dibny, not just as a detective but as an actual person. Ralph gets the call to CCPD that his mum, named Debbie, is guilty of robbing a pawn shop. Ralph, of course, tries to go out of his way to prove his mum's innocence, but unfortunately does not succeed. So him and Cecile go to a gambling front to try and learn about what actually happened. They go to meet the owner of the gambling front, and the owner says that, "I'll give you the footage in exchange for $5,000, which is absolutely crazy. So Debbie and Cecile distract them by playing poker while Ralph uses his stretch powers and steals the security footage off a USB drive. Now this I really enjoyed a lot, and as I've said before, that it's really good to see how far Elongated Man has grown from season 4 and 5 to now. I mean, at the beginning, as I said before, that he was just a goofy bum of a detective who's always constantly making jokes and never taking anything seriously. So in these episodes, it's really good to see that Ralph is using his head more and more, and he's definitely become a lot more serious. I mean, sure, he's still got the classic Ralph Dibny sense of humour that we all know him for, but you can really see that he's taking a lot more on board, and he's really taking his job seriously, not just as a detective but as a hero all round. So I really enjoyed seeing that side to him. And speaking of seeing a different side to him, Ralph goes through the footage and finds the footage of a man named Marv Perez, a man that his mum used to date. Debbie reveals to her son that she lied about all of her boyfriends dying after Ralph's dad left because she did it to protect him from being hurt. So that was a very nice scene, and a very rare scene as well. So it was nice to see that scene of Ralph and his mum together. And you know, again, it's nice to see a different side to Elongated Man. And speaking of a different side, Allegra tells Iris that Harrison Wells has resurfaced. Little do they know that it's not actually Harrison Wells that we all remember from season 1. It's actually Nash Wells, Harrison Nash Wells, so to speak, from another Earth. Now, for some of you out there who know his true identity, Nash Wells is actually Pariah, but nobody knows that yet. So, little Easter egg there, little minor spoiler, but probably you guys know that already. But anyway, so as I said, Allegra gives Iris a story about Harrison Wells resurfacing and potentially robbing McCulloch Industries. So Iris and Cisco go to investigate, and they confront the newest Wells. Now, if you've watched every season of The Flash, you'll know every time Cisco and a version of Wells cross paths, they always get off to a very aggressive start. So he is initially very hostile to Cisco, but Iris, to my shock, no pun intended, actually tases him. My God, talk about coming a long way. So she tases this Harrison Wells, who reveals himself to be Nash Wells, and he reveals to the pair of them that he's looking for an artifact containing Eternium. We have no idea what Eternium is, but before they even get a chance to ask him questions, he disappears, but not before Iris gives this version of Harrison Wells a piece of her mind. So it's really good to see that. And you know, all due respect to the cast of The Flash, from Grant Gustin to Jesse L. Martin to Carlos Valderreyes to everyone, they're all great actors, but in my honest opinion, Tom Cavanagh is quite possibly the best actor in the Arrowverse. And I'm not taking anything away from everyone else, but he is such a versatile actor. Even though he is essentially playing Wells, but he plays so many different versions of Wells and performs them so well that they really feel like different and separate people. And he does this yet again, and he's such an amazing versatile actor. And you know, he could play any kind of role. I mean, he's amazing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he's going to play Pariah when we do eventually get to the Crisis. So mega props to him. He's the man. All due respect to others, he's the best. So after Nash escapes, Allegra sees him there and pulls up Iris and questions her if she is a liar. And Iris says, "I will tell you everything, but not right now. When the time is right, you will know everything." So Clearly, Iris has other things on her mind, mainly the crisis and the idea of Barry possibly dying and sacrificing his life in the crisis. So after all that, Ramsey gets attacked by Romero and they realise that the two of them are linked in some way. Barry goes to chase Romero into the pipeline and quickly locks him up, but he uses his strength to escape. Killer Frost realises that Romero's rage is fueled by the dark matter, and she convinces Barry to give him so much of the dark matter that he explodes into a goob. That's disgusting. Yeah. So Ramsey later heals from his injuries and leaves and tells Barry very coldly, "I'll see you in the next life." Very chilling stuff. So Ramsey uses some of Romero's blood to cure his cancer, and he lets his body absorb the blood, and he decides that he needs more. Here we go. Blood work is coming. So after that, Barry decides to throw a birthday party for Frost, which I think was quite nice. So it was really cool to see that. And Barry and Iris tell the rest of Team Flash about the crisis, but they also tell the rest of the team about what happens to Barry. And yeah, it's quite an emotional moment, you know, having to tell your whole team / friends that you're going to die in the crisis. It's quite an emotional moment. I mean, I thought the acting in this scene was really well done, and I really enjoyed the scene a lot. You could really see that. I'm not saying Team Arrow don't have each other's back, but they're more like a team, so to speak. Team Flash, I would say they're more like a family. So when you tell your family that you could possibly die, it's quite sad, really. It's quite emotional stuff. So it was really good to see that. So the last shot we see of this episode is Nash Wells walking up to a manhole and ripping it open and saying, "It's here." So what could that possibly be? Who knows? But that's how we close the episode. So a nice cliffhanger to end episode 3 and a cool setup for episode 4. So overall, this was a very good episode. I enjoyed this one a lot. Really been enjoying season 6 of The Flash a lot, and I like the way they're really preparing for Barry's potential death in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I am really enjoying the fact that, you know, Barry's actually starting to come round to the idea that he has to do what he has to do to save everyone in order to prevent the crisis. So this was a really good episode, and they really did a good job of foreshadowing what's to come. So with that all said, I'm going to leave this here for you guys. What did you think of episode 3? Did you enjoy it? Was there anything you liked about it? Was there anything you didn't like about it? How did you think the team handled the news of Barry dying in the crisis? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I'll be back for another edition of The Flash Season 6, where I'll be talking about episode 4. So till then, take care everybody.